Hello again, EDU 510 peeps. Here's a short video on the Annotated Bibliography Part 2 and Synthesis assignment. So just a clarification about the articles. This assignment asks you to find 7 new articles. So that's in addition to the 5 that you had previously. So of course, in Part 1, so of course that's 12 articles altogether. Only 2 of those 7 can be research reports that are not from peer-reviewed scholarly journals. So for example, 2 of them can be things like government reports of research, maybe research reviews, research that government did about schools, research that the IB organization did about its own schools or its own organization. Those are research reports, so they can be included in an annotated bibliography, but they are not scholarly and peer-reviewed, and so only 2 of the 7 can be that kind. If it's not about research at all, if it's just a report, you don't want to include it. It has to have some degree of talking about a study or a research that it's done. Annotations are going to be done in a similar way to the bibliography part 1. So like I said, we have 12 articles in total now. So now, out of those 12 articles, you're going to pick 7. And some of those can be from the first batch of 5, and some of them can be from the second batch of 7. But you're going to pick 7 altogether, and you're going to try to use those together with what you have come up with as a potential research topic so far, and you're going to try to write a synthesis of what the literature is saying surrounding your research topic. The picture here of the synthesis in blue kind of shows that a synthesis is not a list of things you've learned from the literature. It's supposed to be greater than the sum of its parts, although I don't know if people ever get to that point. But the idea is it should gel into kind of a constellation of ideas around your research topic, and your synthesis should give the reader a pretty good idea of what that kind of map of the sky looks like. For that reason, I'm going to give you a few hints as to how I write a synthesis, and this may or may not help you, but I'm going to give you the hints anyways. So first of all, when I start reading articles, I read for themes. And so what I do is I literally have a notebook in front of me the whole time I'm working, and I'm writing with my pen, and I'm writing what kind of sticks out to me, or what I think the main ideas are here, or what's interesting about this article, why I'm using that article. And I might even write short little quotes from the authors that really speak to me so that I remember exactly kind of what they said and how they said it. And I'll do that for each of the articles. Now, I've already done the bibliography on this, but this is helping me because now I'm going through it again. We call that an iterative process. I'm going through it again, and I'm looking at it again in a more holistic way. Then put the themes into related groups. And so is there a central theme, and these articles are all supporting the theme in different ways? Or is there a progression happening between one article and the next article? Pay attention to things like dates. And so it's really interesting to try to put that together for yourself, and that will take some time before you ever probably start writing. I suggest you don't just start sitting down at your computer and typing away before you've done this kind of processing. Otherwise, it's harder to put it together after the fact. So then you add your sources that support your theme. So once you have kind of your themes that you want to talk about and how they're going to gel together, then you talk about what your individual sources have said about each one of those themes. You kind of put that all together, and I like drawing concept maps, and I like drawing them on whiteboards because it helps me to plan things, and I can erase things and rearrange things. I can walk away from it and come back and rearrange it some more. That's up to you how you do that. But then I always also make an outline. So I make an actual piece of paper. Paragraph 1 is going to say this. Paragraph 2 is going to say that. Paragraph 3 is going to say that. And that really helps me to keep myself really nice and organized as I write, so I'm not scattering my thoughts from one thing to another, which is really common in early graduate writing. And so it's something that we try to help you to organize your thoughts. Use paragraphs wisely. I I still sometimes in graduate writing see whole page paragraphs that's too long, or one sentence paragraphs that's too short. So think very hard about how you're breaking up your writing. You can use subtitles if necessary, but you have to use proper APA seriation, they call it, or the proper way to do subtitles. So pay attention to that if you decide to use subtitles. If it's a very well flowing paper, it might not need subtitles. Then, like I said in previous assignments, what I do is I just write. I write as long as it's going to be. I don't pay any attention to how many words or pages I'm at. And then I usually have at least twice as much as I'm supposed to. And so I start cutting down. I start revising. So every word starts to count and I don't have any repetition. I'll proofread it afterwards. I'll get somebody else to proofread it if I don't think that I'm finding all the mistakes, or if I'm not confident in my grammar or those kinds of things. It's great if you have like an English teacher, that can read your paper for you. And even as a proofreader, sometimes it's good to have somebody that doesn't know what you're talking about, a non-teacher, read this and see if they can figure out what you're talking about, even if they don't know any of the educational jargon and they don't know any of the issues. If they can read it and figure out what you're talking about, you probably have pretty good flow, and you probably have a pretty good feel for what you're writing about, because it's not about the fancy language you use and it's not about the terminology you use. It's about making it clear that you understand where the literature is taking you. And don't forget, somewhere in there you have to talk about the holes. So the places where you looked for literature and couldn't find any, or where you think you might want to go with your work, where it seems like no one has gone before, to sound kind of Star Trek-ish. But there are such places in just about every research area, and you'll find them if you look. Check the rubric again before you hand it in. Make sure you're doing everything that it says on the rubric. In-text quotes. I often get asked, can we put in-text quotes? Can we quote the authors if they say something really good? And my answer is yes, but use them really sparingly and make them really short, because you'll waste a lot of words. No big block quotes, no matter how much you love what the person said. This is a paraphrasing process, and so you should be trying to keep it really condensed and short. And if somebody has a little phrase that you just think is so pithy and you just want to use it, then of course you can, and you should do an in-text citation for that. And you also will need a references list at the end, because you have to tell me which 7 of the 12 articles that you are summarizing in the work. You can also cite a paraphrase section. You don't have to like, you can say things like Smith and Wesson 1992 claim that blah 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 blah, right? It doesn't have to be a direct quote. So you can make sure you attribute the work of the authors to the authors as you're working, but you don't have to directly quote them unless necessary. You need a reference section at the end, APA of course, and a title page for the whole thing. 5 pages, and so that's a very tall order, 5 pages for what we're asking you to do, so it has to be pretty tight writing. I would suggest that those 2 bullets, revise and proofread, are going to take you longer than you think. My go-to strategy, very hard-won strategy after years of learning the hard way, is to make the assignment due 2 days before, for myself, 2 days before the actual due date, come back to it the next day and proofread and revise some more, sleep on it again and come back to it and revise it the next day. Every time you go away from it for a long period of time and come back to it, it'll read like a fresh document a little bit more for you. After a while, looking at the same document, no matter how many hours you spend with it, if you don't walk away from it for a while, you won't get that feeling for how it might be flowing for somebody else. So pay attention to how the reader is going to feel when they read this. Not about how you feel when you're writing it, but how a reader is going to be able to understand this and feel like they know about your topic when you're finished. It's a tall order, but I have faith that you can do it based upon what I've seen so far. So good luck with that, and thanks for paying attention. Okay, bye-bye.